Mm.
Welcome to DisabiliTEA, a special edition of the Finding Avalon podcast. I'm Jenna, a disabled advocate and creator from Atlanta, Canada. Settle in as we spill the tea on all things disability, chronic illness, and neurodivergence. I have Eryk Maxwell joining me today from Williamsburg, Virginia in the United States. Eryk is a self-proclaimed chaotic creative who's a writer, content creator, and artist. He's also a husband and father of 3, not to mention a discerning tea aficionado. His creative expression involves words, paint, video, pictures, toys, trash, and clothing, all things that tell a story that helps channel his emotions and memories. As an autistic adult with ADHD, lupus, and widespread arthritis, Eryk starts authentic conversations online as a Black man who doesn't fit into the boxes created for him by society. He uses his blog, TikTok, and Instagram to talk about creativity, mental health, chronic illness, and neurodiversity. On top of that, he's pursuing a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling to increase his advocacy impact. Eryk, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to spilling the tea with you.
Wonderful. Then I say cheers to that.
Mm.
What have you brought for tea today?
So this teacup is a thrifted teacup. Most of my teacups are thrifted or gifted at this point. And what I love about this one is it has this fun little design in it. And so it's just, I don't know, it makes me very happy. And I'm drinking a Blue Lotus tea with chamomile. So we have a local apothecary shop called the Green Cauldron in town. And I was just there this afternoon looking for teas, and the herbalist was there. So that was super exciting because I get to just, she has to info dump on me about all the herbs and what they mean. And I can ask all these questions, and it's been so much fun. So yes, so that is what I'm drinking today.
I love the sound of the Green Cauldron, I can tell you that.
It is an amazing shop. It is just, yeah, it's so exciting, and it's a little overstimulating when you first walk in, but in the best kind of way.
Yeah.
And the staff there, everyone is there is so kind and understanding and willing to answer all your millions of questions. It's a fun place to be.
I'm drinking a creamy cardamom chai from my mug.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very delicious. It's so good that I couldn't even finish my sentence without taking a sip. And this is a mug from Builder Burner Ceramics made by Alana Leah Wilson, today's episode
Mm,
sponsor. I'm going to show it nice and close. And they make colorful hand-built ceramic works in their studio in Sydney, Nova Scotia on stunning Cape Breton Island. If you've never
mm.
been to Cape Breton, I highly recommend you put it on your travel list.
Nice.
I really enjoy their cloud line of ceramics, and I'm gonna show you. Of course, you see the, cute little cloud on this one. I really love the gray because if you're in a
Very nice.
yeah, in a moody, gloomy, or contemplative mood, right?
Yes.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That is amazing.
You're gonna be pleased because it's coming to you in the mail.
What? My gosh.
Yes! Yes, this is for you, my friend.
My gosh. Oh, thank you.
Of course, and this is something I picked up from an artisan craft fair that I saw them at, and it's just like a little trinket dish, and it's a cloud, and
That is beautiful.
I love it.
That is awesome.
So I've got the sunny day one, and I'm gonna send you the cloudy day, and you can use it
Oh,
as you see fit.
love it. That's awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So shout out to Builder Burner Ceramics for helping us spill the disability. So, Eryk, sometimes real change starts with a conversation over a hot drink, just like this. What disability related topic would you like to spill the tea about today?
Mm. So the thing that's been fresh on my mind because it's happening right now to me is when you already have a chronic illness or even multiple chronic illnesses and you end up getting a new diagnosis. And starting in the fall, I was like feeling really bad, really run down. My energy levels would like fluctuate wildly. There were a couple of days where I couldn't get out of bed and which that happens sometimes, but this was like my mind felt shut down, and that's what threw me off, and my vision had changed, like, it was off, I am a tiny bit nearsighted, but I don't need prescriptions, but, like, all of a sudden, like, I really couldn't see things that were, like, right here in front of me, and at first, I thought that maybe I had, like, a flu or COVID or something like that because of the fatigue and the achiness. So go to the clinic, talk with the doctor. She kind of looks at my chart. She's like, well, we're just going to run labs on everything given your history. And they also did like the flu COVID swab, which came up negative. And the next morning she calls me and says, you have diabetes and you need to go to the ER right now. And I was just like, wait, what? I mean, I know my rheumatologist had said something about my blood sugar, a couple months ago, and I just dismissed it because I was like, oh, I had a cinnamon roll that morning when I had the labs. That's probably all it was. And I didn't even look at the numbers. And it was like 380, that test was, which is more than a cinnamon roll. And the labs that she was looking at, my glucose levels was over 400. So at that point, knowing that it's uncontrolled, they need to make sure I'm not going into ketosis, which I don't even know what that is, but apparently it's life threatening. So I go to the ER and, there are all these tests and they give me some medication before I leave. And I mean, the doctor there and he's like, yeah, considering the consecutive readings over time, this is diabetes. It's not just like a random weird thing. And it was flooring, 'cause it's like, it's this systemic change. 'Cause that's what throws me off the most. As an autistic person, I've learned to navigate most daily changes I can handle. I know that life can't be fully predictable, and I'm okay with that. But systemic changes, things that change your life and how you live your life every day, that can be overwhelming. For me, I feel like, am I just gonna keep breaking? Am I broken? Was my body like some kind of factory second from Kmart?
No.
Um, anyway, and, and then not only are you getting your head around the fact that there's yet another diagnosis, sometimes it can be very discouraging to talk to anyone else about it because they're only going to talk to you about that one diagnosis. Right. So I'll say, I have diabetes and I'm devastated because I have lupus. I have like all these other things already. And now it's something else. More food I can't eat, more medicine to take, more activities have to do to keep myself functioning. And people will be like, oh, yeah, my uncle has diabetes. You just do this and you'll be fine. And like almost, and I don't think they're trying to be dismissive. I really don't think that's their intent, but they're not taking into account that it's on top of everything else. By itself, if I had no other health issues with diabetes, fine, fine, but it's on top of all of that. And I feel like garbage right now. So it can be very overwhelming. And for me, the way I deal with that now is that I have a little life chart. I've talked about it on my socials a little bit. And it's like these different zones of my life because it's the only way I can handle it. Otherwise, I'm overwhelmed. Between my ADHD and my autism, new things are so overwhelming. So by breaking myself down into zones, I can focus on one facet at a time. And so the first thing I start with is my brain, is my mind, my mindset. I and for me, it begins with understanding what I'm dealing with. Actually, backtrack. First thing I do is throw a pity party. That's the first thing I do because you're going to have emotions. You just got to do diagnosis. Something new is going on. And trying to move straight into problem solving mode sometimes isn't even possible. It's not possible for me anyway. If it's possible for you, you're awesome. But like me personally, I can't function yet. I'm like, what is this? Why is this happening? And I need to get that out of my system. And I think that it's good, to honor our emotions and to mourn that new reality. I believe it's healthy, it's a better out than in, bad emotions are like snot, you don't want it stuck in your body. Get it out. So I cry, I throw a fit, all that fun stuff. And then after my pity party, which is part of the mind area, then it's learning exactly what even is diabetes. What 'Cause I never knew. I knew it had to do with sugar, too much sugar. I knew insulin was a factor, but I didn't really understand it. And so taking the time to go on YouTube, watch some kids videos. Kids videos are the best for learning new things because it's simple language. You can get your head around the basics, and then I can move up to something, more grown up or whatever. But it helps me understand what's happening in my body, and it makes it less scary, it takes the mystery out of it. This is what's happening in my body. This is what's going wrong. Then and then I'm once that's ready, then I'm able to start thinking about problem solving, and this is where the brain and body parts start to kind of overlap. Because mentally I'm problem solving, but also thinking about the body. What physically do I need to change? In this case, it was diet. I had, really strict diet, and I could have gone gradual, but my logic was I was already miserable, and I'd rather just embrace the misery, wear it like a garment, and so I did. I drastically changed my diet, of course, started medication, and yeah, and so it just kinda goes from there, and then once I know what I need to do for my body, then I'm looking at my schedule and my routines, which some they need to adjust, right? My work schedule, I went down to 3 days a week for a couple months so that I have some extra time to just rest and figure this out because I can't quit working completely, but I can use some of my PTO and just bite the bullet and take at least a day because it's either slow down or get shut down, you
Absolutely.
know?
Because and
Um,
stress and overworking and being overstressed will then totally impact your blood glucose,
mhm,
right? And then you're
exactly,
just chasing your tail while going downhill the whole way.
exactly, and so I didn't wanna do that. So because partly due to my autism, partly due to my ADHD, and partly due to my anxiety, food for me is difficult. Oh, and I have dietary restrictions because of my lupus, because of my IBS, because of my sensory issues. But also I'm not always aware of when I'm hungry, or I'll be aware at the last minute and then I can't think straight because I need to eat now, and then I'm eating junk or eating the wrong thing. So I tend to eat on a schedule, which is kind of weird when I say it out loud, but it works. And so it did make changing my diet a little bit easier because I was already on a food schedule. It was just adjusting the foods that were on that schedule. And so that's why I'm a huge routine person. It takes time to develop them. It takes time to grow. It's more like growing routines, honestly. It feels more like gardening because I can't just say, I'm going to do this every day. And then all of a sudden, magically, it works. It's like, you start it and it happens, it doesn't happen, it happens, it doesn't happen. It's this fits and starts, one step forward, two steps back. But eventually it starts getting traction. And then once I have the routine, I can add things to it. And then the other part is communicating because when a new diagnosis comes in, it can change how you interact with your family or your friends or even your job. And and how do you communicate that? And that's part of why I like to start with understanding the diagnosis, understanding what's happening in my body. Because then when I talk with my boss, which I did, and said, hey, I need to make an adjustment for a little while. I've got diabetes. And here is why it's an issue because of my other diagnoses. With work, I leave nothing to chance. I don't over explain, but I try to be very thorough and clear about why I need this. And when I talk to my doctor before I leave for the note, I ask them to put certain things specifically in the note in language that's going to match what I'm going to be saying when I walk in, because I want to make sure that, basically, it's being backed by my doctor. My doctor's agreeing, yes, you being virtual or you having some extra time off would be a good idea because of your overlapping whatevers. And that way it's not just me saying it, right? It's
Mhm.
not just my opinion. Cause my fear is always that people will think that I'm just trying to get away with something or I'm just being lazy or, he just wants a vacation, you know? And again, where I work, they don't treat me like that. They're very kind. This is just trauma. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's just something that,
I
you
get
know,
I get what you're saying.
because I and also because I don't look like anything's wrong with me. I look fine. I don't look like I had a life expectancy conversation with my doctor earlier this week. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and so that's the other part of why it's always very important for me to I feel like I want to make sure I explain everything so people know, no, I'm not just whining, I'm not just complaining. This is, what's happening. And I practice, I rehearse what I'm going to say. I think it through. I don't try to just talk off the cuff. I try to think about common objections to what I'm going to say so I'm ready when I sit down and have that conversation. Yeah, communication and how you communicate it to people. It's such an important part of it.
Mhm. Because you don't wanna leave anything to imagination, but you also wanna keep your privacy and don't give too much detail, but you wanna make
Mhm.
sure that it aligns with how you will regularly discuss it and what accommodations you need now and possibly in the future too. Yeah, it's very autistic to rehearse our conversations, to think about
Yes, it
rebuttal
is.
as if you're being interviewed, to think, "Okay, if they say this, how do I handle that?" When you're saying this, I'm nodding so much because I really I get that part for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that. Is there anything else on the on your life chart that helps you when you've got the new diagnosis? You've talked to your arrangements in your workplace. What about at home with family? Of course, they already know. You've already had the talk with them.
Yeah, they already know. Other than really, once the routine is set, the next thing I actually, I look at actually is like what I carry with me every day. So I call my everyday carry my bags, my clothes, my shoes. Does anything like that need to change? For with diabetes, nothing really needed to change. But like when I got my asthma diagnosis, that was I carry an inhaler. I carry an EpiPen, things like that. And then I look at my spaces. And so with that, in that case, it had more to do with the kitchen because it's, it's what I'm eating, it's food, it's where do I keep my food, it's separate just so people don't eat it because what I can eat is limited. And in that point, it is having conversation saying, "Hey, I bought this. Please, nobody else eat it. Like, I can't eat all this other stuff." And the first couple days after the diagnosis, I did sit down with my partner and have a conversation. Say, "Hey, I'm probably going to be a little grumpy. It's not you. I'm trying my best to, keep it under wraps." And same thing to my kids. I call it being a hedgehog because the closer you get to a hedgehog, the spikes.
A little
Um,
bit prickly.
Yes, yes, and so, I say I'm gonna be a little bit of a hedgehog, and, and it's my way of kind of communicating what's going on, and that way, if I am a little bit grumpy, it's not an excuse to be a jerk, but it is admission that I'm dysregulated, that I'm overwhelmed, and that I can't handle anything right now, and and it works because then I've communicated that, and the way my partner will communicate with me will be more direct and like to the point of, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you need this? No. Okay." Versus maybe a more casual form of communication. And for my partner, she knows what's going on and I'll keep to myself a little bit more. Like the other term I use is being a turtle, like where a turtle's all the way in its shell. And that'll usually be where I'll appear emotionless. I won't really react to anything because I'm just shut down. Like I'll talk to you, but I'm not going to emote. I'm not going to laugh. I'm not going to cry. It's like the emotion centers are just offline for a while and I'm deep in my own head. Communicating with the people I see every day, it really does help in trying to explain what kind of mood you're going to be in if you know. If you don't know, then that's, obviously that's fine. But yeah, that communication piece really does help. And then just making sure I have teas nearby,
Yeah,
you know.
tell me a little. I Of course, because I follow you and I love that you're experimenting now with teas, as part of your ongoing intake and treatment in a way, let's say, because teas can be very healing. Are you experimenting mixing them? What's happening with the tea?
Yeah. So I am experimenting with making my own blends now. So that's a very new thing. Before that, I was just kind of experimenting with herbs and with different tea ingredients. But now I'm actually like looking them up. I have, there you are. So this is my little notebook, and I keep all of my, like, as I'm learning, like, it's really fun. Like, the pages are like all like worn and like, you know,
It's a
um,
grimoire. It's a grimoire.
yes, it's my little grimoire. And so I write down, I'll look up lists. Like at one point I did a post where I asked everybody to share different herbs for relaxation. And so I just write them all down, make a little list. And so yeah, so I have a morning blend that has like digestive herbs in the tea. So it's yerba mate for a little bit of a caffeine kick, very slight, because tea's really the only source of caffeine for me right now. So it's yerba mate, and then it's different herbs for digestion, and it helps with my IBS. And so I drink that in the
Wow,
morning with my
okay.
breakfast.
I'm making
And
notes.
then I have like I have an afternoon. That one's still not quite ready, but it's a green tea with different liver support herbs in it um for the midday. And then I have one calling it the winter blend because it's different herbs for winter, things like nettle leaf, star anise. And that one's a decaf black tea is the base. And yeah, so like I've kind of been like playing, like trying to learn ratios and all of that fun stuff. And it's been a fun journey. Like even beyond like the health part, it's just fun learning about them and learning about different ways to, support what I'm already doing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, yes, I see my doctor and yes, I go to meds. And that's always a great start. I always like to, if there's something I can naturally be doing to support that journey, it's a very slow process because I'm also cross referencing with my medications. As certain herbs can have adverse interactions. And so I check and I look at what am I taking and then is that going to be an issue? So that is a pretty serious part of it. And I'm not an herbalist, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, which is part of why I don't really share any of my recipes. And I don't really talk too much about any benefits from any herbs in my videos because I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like there's certain followers who if they suggested something, I'd be like, I'll think about it because they've been following me for 3 years and they know my health journey and they know, do you know what I mean? Like people who are here for my story, they know they're not just giving advice to a diabetic. They're giving advice to a diabetic who's autistic, has ADHD, has lupus, arthritis, da, 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 da. And a lot of people just give me advice and it's like, you haven't asked me any questions. You haven't asked any questions to understand what else is going on. What are my intersectionalities? And that is so important because, like I said, for myself, I look at all aspects when I make these changes. That's part of why I have this chart to go piece by piece in my life, even because there are so many parts that make us who we are. And we're so much more than one diagnosis. Sometimes we're multiple diagnoses, right? Multiple comorbidities, or it could be just mental health. Like if you have ADHD and are diabetic, well, the ADHD can derail your dietary plans because of, executive function, impulse control, chasing the dopamine fix. And people could argue, well, you're an adult, you should be able to have it under control. It's like, yes, I should. You're right. I should be able to, but I don't. And that's why I have a diagnosis.
Exactly. That's a very ableist knee-jerk response without people even
Yeah.
realizing it's ableist, right? I call it like the benevolent ableism.
Yes.
They kind of say, "Well, you should be, or you should know," but it's like, no, this is actually an entire other part of my life and my being and considerations. Like, for example, if you have IBS and you've eaten something that made you feel incredibly ill and you have an IBS attack, your blood sugar is going to go completely crazy. That will destabilize mood as well. And then autism and ADHD, that combo, the ADHD combo starts doing
Yep.
things in two different directions. And
Yep.
suddenly it is a complete and total mess. And it's not your fault. or my fault or whoever's fault. It is just the complexity of all those layers that we are trying to manage and
Exactly.
care for, you know?
Exactly. And that is, yeah. And that is a big part of why I am pursuing clinical mental health counseling because for me, I am very passionate about the intersection of mental health with all of this because whatever your diagnosis might be or diagnoses may be, the mental health aspect seems to be the area with the least attention and the least support.
Yeah.
And like when I was in the emergency room, nobody was mean to me, no one was unkind, but it was clear that there was no addressing the mental health aspect of what I was going through. And again, it's nothing against the doctors and nurses, and they were all great. They did a great job, but it's their training. It's nothing against them. It's the way they're trained,
Yeah.
right?
It's systemic.
Right. And if you get someone who's naturally empathetic, and that does happen. In fact, one of the nurses, she was naturally empathetic, but that was her gift. That was her unique factor. It was not systemic, as you said. It's not a systemic part of it. And same thing that like when I was in education, when I would tutor a student, I noticed that 80%, sometimes more, the mindset, the mental health side of it. This subject was triggering an anxiety response, which was causing them to shut down, which was causing them not to retain information because they were in distress. And so now they're not learning. If you can make it fun, if you can help them, you can work on that aspect of it, it can change the learning completely. So my goal, my desire is to be more active in the advocacy side of the mental health aspect as not just mental health by itself, but as mental health relates to chronic illness and education. Of course, I'm already very passionate about that because it's such a big deal and not just the person with the diagnosis, but the people around them, you know? Anyway, yeah, it's something I care a lot about.
Yeah, it's very evident, and we do need more leaders and carers, people who care like you, who are not afraid to share their own stories and help other people feel seen, and then lead by example in a lot of ways. Because disability is very human, it's very common,
Mhm.
and it is very complex. There are times when you may start with one or two disabilities, but then they may spin off and create something else, or a treatment or a medication may even trigger something else. And I always joke, and it's not really a joke, but it's like you're playing whack-a-mole and you're just kind of trying to manage each item, and it can be
Yes.
overwhelming. So, like, the fact that you're even doing your master's so that you can be counseling with all of your lived experience too, I think that's gonna help so many people.
I really hope so because not everybody has the resources and, to get what they need or to find the information they need. I was, I guess, privileged in a lot of ways in that I love researching. It is one of my special interests, the act of researching. And I thought that's just perfectly normal. Everybody's researches whatever it is. And I've quickly found out that's not the case. And that there are so many people that it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I have this, thing and I don't know what to do with that part of it, but I would love to find a way to help people with that. The other thing I'd love to find a way to help people with is how we talk to our doctors and people in our care team, because I have developed ways of communicating to be heard, to be understood. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I shut down. Um, but there's a lot to that. When you're in a doctor's visit, how do you get the most out of it? How do you not just get steamrolled by somebody who just wants to be over with? And again, I'm not hating on doctors or nurses because so often they are overworked. So often they are so busy, they're so packed, and they're doing their best. I mean, some
Yeah.
of them are jerks, yes, but for
Yeah.
the most part, it's the system, the way the system is set up that's the problem. And I would love to find a way to help with that or enact change somewhere down the road.
like patient self-advocacy guidance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So, Eric, before we go, what can people do to take action for disability inclusion?
I was going to say share your story, but that's not always safe or possible for everyone. I think that the most important part is actually how we talk to ourselves. It's knowing that you matter and that you have value and that you have worth exactly the way you are and who you are. And that you deserve to ask for accommodations from work. You deserve to ask for accommodations at home, even when it is not given to you, to know that that is not a reflection on you or your worth. That is a reflection on them and their inhumanity in that moment. And I feel like that's one of the most important pieces because it affects how we talk about ourselves. It affects how we behave. Think about entitled people, right? They assume they're going to get their way. And often it does kind of happen. um, and I feel like so often we are so used to apologizing for things that aren't even our fault that we either don't ask for what we need or we don't ask for what we need with expectation that it'll happen. So I feel like knowing and practicing, really it's practicing believing in our own worth and value because it is a practice. It's a daily practice. It's a daily practice for me. I do believe if it's safe for you to do so, sharing your story because the more of our stories that are out there, it becomes normal. The idea of, we consider normal as just what is common. But if it's not talked about, if it's hidden, if it's pushed to the sides, it can never become common. And unfortunately, there are people out there who actively try to make that happen. It's part of why I share my story, why I share things. I remember somebody was like, who I know in person, saw my content and is like, that's really personal. You're like putting a lot of stuff out there. Aren't you afraid people are going to use that against you? And I was like, yeah, it's a risk. But if this stuff isn't talked about, if I don't share this journey, then I'm feeding the narrative that it's abnormal. I'm feeding the narrative that it's something to be ashamed of, and it's not. And that's why, my videos go from I'm confident and speaking smoothly and talking, and there's days where I'm a mess. And when one video I'm wearing a suit, the next video I've got like I'm just in a pair of shorts or wrapped in a towel, because that is the reality.
Yeah,
We're not always functioning well. We're not always not functioning. And this nonsense that, oh, well, you can't do anything. No, child, that's not what I said. I can't do anything today. I'll be fine tomorrow, you know.
exactly. Exactly.
Um, and then of course, reaching out to your political representatives. I started being a little bit more active about that this year, saying, hey, this is a problem. This is what's going on. And when the people door to door doing their politics stuff, now I try to open the door. I usually avoid them, but now I try to open the door and I have a list of topics ready, rehearsed to say, these are the things I'm concerned about. This is my problem because that's what they need to hear it. And again, it comes back to sharing my story with them, saying, this is what I'm concerned about. This is what is an issue. It's using our voices and individually, none of us are very loud, but if we all keep speaking, we will be heard. And I mean, if you look at the history of, many countries, but definitely in America, change happened because people didn't stop talking about it until something changed. And sometimes it takes years, but it's worth it.
Thank you so much for spending time with me today and bringing these experiences and your own personal perspective. It's so important for breaking stereotypes and banishing stigma, which is so
Absolutely.
unfounded and outdated and so harmful and upholds these systemic issues. And
Mm,
and like you say, yes, there's a fine line we can walk sometimes with what we share, but I think I, like you, feel like it's my responsibility to try to undo some of these incorrect narratives and actually normalize having inclusive, honest discussions about how disability does impact us and our
yes,
communities.
I agree. And again, I think that if you're safe to do so, I am
Yes.
blessed, privileged, whatever you want to call it, that my job knows all my diagnoses. When I interviewed there, I was like, this is what I'm dealing with. And but this is also what I can do for you. This is my skill set. And so I don't have to worry about losing my job because of me being honest about it. So I feel like because of that, like you said, there is almost like an obligation. Like I don't have to do it. I can choose not to. But it seems, but why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Especially when I know that there are some who can't speak up, who
Yeah, it's a
can't
it's a
share their
it's a
story.
mindful choice, and
Yeah.
that's the justice-seeking part of our
Yes.
autism, and
Yes.
ADHD minds and souls, right? Because justice is really
Yes.
down deep in the core. Yeah.
Agreed.
Here's to spilling the disability.
Cheers.
Thanks for supporting the Finding Avalon podcast and the DisabiliTEA series. Every follow, share, like, and comment on this episode helps support authentic, empowered, disabled storytelling. Special thanks once again to our episode sponsor, Builder Burner Ceramics. As always, check out the Finding Avalon blog and my socials for bonus footage.